Hello everybody, so today I want to quickly look at how to use the birth rate for your pop simulations, your particle simulations. So as you might remember in this last lesson, we just created this geometry network. Let me go in here, sphere, created, transform, and then into the pop network. And then in here, if you remember, I've set up my pop network. If you're not sure how all of this works, just take a look in the previous few lessons. And we see here that we've got this kind of fountain effect, I guess. Okay, so I just want to quickly look at the birth rate. So if we go into our source input, our pop source here, we can see we've got the variance, which we looked at in the last lesson. But then if I go into the birth tab, I've got a bunch of information here. Now these options, I just want to look at these first four for now. I've got impulse activation, impulse count, constant activation, and constant birth rate. The constant birth rate is the one that I'm going to look at first. It's set currently at 1000. Let me reduce that down to say 10. Let's see what happens there. Okay, we can see a lot less particles coming out. All right, now let's say I increase that to say 4000. Right, let's see what this looks like. There we go, got a lot more. So how is this calculated? Well, first of all, you might look at this and you might think, okay, well, this is interesting, but is it 4000 frames for every, 4000 particles for every frame? Now let's take a look at this. First of all, I want to turn on my information here. Let's hit the D key and I can go into my guides, geometry information. Aha, it's not on there. Maybe the way around this, because I wanted to see how many particles I've got here and it's not showing me. So I'm going to go out of here into my pop network. Let me try this. And now I can see that it's showed up, right? I'm getting my number of points there and I can see each frame it's increasing, if you look there, right? But it only shows me this from outside the pop network, right? Once I'm inside there, I can't see it. So I'm going to go out and then I'm going to hit this button here, which helps me to kind of pin this viewport. And what this should mean is that when I now go into here, you can see it's still pinned into this section here, into the geometry section, right? So sorry, I've got something in my throat. When I go into my dynamics, my particle operator here, what I see is now that they're linked. If I unclick this, there we go, I've lost that information again. So I need to come out of here. I can see it's there. I can just link it or pin it using this button here, go back in, and I'm good. I've now got this information. Okay, that's just a little tip there in case you get a bit frustrated with this here. Okay, so anyway, now what it says is the birth rate, back to this again, yes, 4000 particles. Now if I go forward one frame, I've actually only got 434 particles. Next one, 601 particles, or points as it says here, but they're basically your particles, points. They're represented the same in Houdini, okay, etc, etc. What in fact I have got, it's going to give me around 4000 points a second. Now I know my frame rate. Let me just hit this little button here. It tells me my frame rate is 24 frames a second. So let me go forward now to, let me click this here and go forward to frame 24. All right, and I can see I've got 4105. So I've gone a little bit over there. In fact, that one's kind of closer, but you get the idea, right? It never really seems to be exact. Sometimes it does actually, but generally it's a little bit off. Now if I go to the next second, I should be around 8000. And there we go, 8105. Okay, so that's how that works. Let's go take this back. I also have this impulse count, so I'm going to reduce this to 0. Let's have a look how this works. So far there's nothing, right? But let's say I add just 10 in here. Now what I'm getting, in fact, is much more than I did before. If I look at my 10 and my constant is 10. Okay, you can see that there's much less particles. Now here, let's go back to my impulse count. There seems to be a lot more. And the reason is that this isn't calculating 10 per second, now it's calculating 10 per frame. So let's take a quick look at this, and I can see each time this is going up by 10 points. Alright, it's kind of cool. Okay, now I can do this a lot more. Let me go to say 100 points, and then I will go up there, 5, 6, 900, 1000, etc. Right? Now, you might wonder which is the best one. There are different situations where I may use one or the other. As a general rule, in 90% of cases, I'm going to use the constant birth rate rather than the impulse rate. And one of the benefits of doing this is, say I change my frame rate and I change it to say 30, I still know after a second I'm going to get 1,000 particles, 1,000 points, right? With my impulse count, it's going to change that. So I guess that's one of the benefits, although you know, it's not often that you will change the frame rate mid-project, but there is always that helpful thing there. Now you've also got these impulse activation, constant activation. This one's a little bit strange. If I send this to 0, now my constant birth rate doesn't work. If I send it to 1 or above 1, it now works. Anything less than 1, okay, that will, oh, I thought that would turn it off. Is it just on 0? Yeah, okay, I thought anything less would turn it off. Okay, so it turns out that it's 0 turns it off, anything above 0 turns it on. And it's not a multiplier, so there's no difference really between having 7 or having, as it turns out, 0.78. I actually learned something new there. So it's pretty much like an on-off switch. So the question now is, well, why on earth would I have this slider? Why don't I just have like a little checkbox or something to turn it on and off? And I have to admit, this is a little bit confusing. There's anything above 0, it turns out, makes no difference at all, unless maybe there is a difference and somebody in the comments wants to explain what that is. I have absolutely no idea. But the benefit of this is that I can add expressions into here, and that will give me a bit more control. And I guess that's why it's been set up in this way. Maybe I don't want my particle simulate to start until, say, frame 48. I can add an expression here, and that will allow that to do that. Maybe I just want to, you know, spit out every 3rd frame or something. I can also do that using an expression. So I haven't really spoke about expressions, and that's for another lesson. But anyway, that's the reason why it's like this. Again, though, I'm still not sure what all of this, why the difference between 8 and 2, for example, I don't think there is a difference. Now the same, I'm going to put that to default, the same here with the impulse activation, exactly the same thing. 0 is not on at all, 1 is turned on, but it doesn't affect us because there's no impulse count. You can also do these together, so I could have 10 frames a second and the 1,000 per second here, and I would suspect I get a lot more here. Let me see, so we've got 1,000, and here I'm getting 1,345. If I turn this off, let's do that again. Okay, back to frame 24, and I've now got 1,100. So you can see here that this makes a difference. I have no idea why you would mix them. Generally speaking, you will just use one or the other. I personally wouldn't mix them because it's going to get very confused in the mathematics there, and I don't really see a benefit to that. There might be some, but as of yet I've never encountered that situation. Alright, I've gone on way too long. I was going to make this lesson like 2 minutes and I've talked for way too long, so I apologize for that. But anyway, you guys, morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever you're doing, you guys have a great time. All right, bye bye.